Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining this session. My name is Saurav. In this session, we are going to talk about Google Kubernetes Engine. You might have already heard or you might already aware that if you need to manage your uh, containerized application, Kubernetes is the best solution. So what is Google Kubernetes Engine? Google Kubernetes Engine provide a managed environment for deploying, managing, and scaling your containerized application using Google infrastructure. So if you are already running a containerized application somewhere, you need to manage its deployment, you need to manage the scaling of the nodes. In the GKE, they are all managed automatically with the configuration that you defined. The GKE environment basically consists of multiple compute regions that are powered by Kubernetes. So what we are going to do in this session that we will create one a GKE cluster. We will learn how to create one GKE cluster with some basic configuration. So let's try to create one GKE cluster. Now from the navigation menu, you can just select the Kubernetes engine inside the compute. Now you can select the cluster here. Now this tab will show you if you already have any cluster or you can create a new cluster. I'm just going to create one. Now once the panel is ready, you can select the cluster name or you want to deploy the location of your cluster. It can be a zonal or regional. Uh, we will talk about this configuration in detail. You can select the GKU version and the zone in which or the region in which you want to deploy. Now you can define your node configuration, how many nodes that you want to deploy. You want to enable the auto scaling or not. You can define the hardware for the nodes, like what kind of hardware that you want to deploy for Kubernetes cluster. The security for your nodes that you want to define. The metadata that you define that you want for the nodes, the automation for your Kubernetes cluster, like their what port scaling or auto provisioning of nodes. Then you want to define the networking, that what kind of cluster that you want. You want a public cluster or a private cluster. Security that you want to define for your GKE cluster, the metadata for your GKE cluster that you want to define, and there are some other features as well, such as you want to enable Slack driver monitoring by for this Kubernetes cluster. I just already enabled it, so or it's by default. So if you want, you can utilize those features. I'm also going to utilize preemptible instances. So what are the preemptible instance that you can create and run uh, VMs at much lower cost than the normal instances. However, compute engine might terminate those instances if it require access to those resources. So I'm just going to create my first cluster with basic configuration, but I just rem- uh, remove I just removed three node to I just reduced the three node to two nodes, so it's not, you can say, a default configuration, but yeah. uh, Now you can say my GK cluster is up and running with two nodes. These two nodes have two virtual CPU, and the total memory that I have is 7.5 gigs. Now you can select the cluster and see the configuration inside it that you have just defined. This is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to just click on the cluster and see the configuration that I've defined. Now here we go. Now you can see all the configuration, GKE version, the other configuration that you have defined, default node pool that you have created, that hold the information about your node as well. As I already told you, that these GKE cluster have a compute engine behind the compute engine running behind the scene. Now, if you go to the compute VM instances tab, you can see that when you create a GKE cluster, it create the nodes or behind the scene in the compute engine. It created a compute engine uh, that you have defined. Like I created two nodes, so it created a two compute engine with the hardware configuration that I defined in Kubernetes. You can see. Now you can also SSH into those nodes that you have created inside a Kubernetes cluster for some kind of troubleshooting stuff, or if you have some kind of requirement, you can do that as well. You can just transfer the SSH key. If you are running a private GK cluster, then you will not be able to log in into that VM instances. So I'm running a public cluster at the moment, so that's why I'm able to log in, or you can say I'm able to SSH into the VM machine or the nodes that I have deployed. You can run any command that you want to, but I'm not going to do any. So in this demo now we have learned what is GKE, and we try to create one GK cluster with basic configuration, not the basic configuration because we changed the node from 3 to 2. But yeah, but other configuration were default. So thank you so much. Have a good day.